What's up guys, I'm Brett with PrecisionLED, and here we have a 2019 Toyota Tundra we'll be doing an LED interior light installation on. Now the 2019 is part of the third generation Tundra, so this installation will be compatible with all years 2014 to present. Now today we're going to be installing a premium PrecisionLED 3D kit on the interior. We're going to be covering the front map, the rear dome, the truck bed lights, the vanity mirrors, the footwell, and the reverse lights. Now all of our interior LED kits come with these 3 interior trim tools we're going to be using throughout the video. We have our pointed wedge tool, our serrated knife tool, and our fork-shaped wedge tool. So we're going to start by installing on the front map light. Now, as you can see, I've already gone ahead and done the install on the passenger side, so I'm going to show you how to install on the driver's side. Now, if you look closely, you can actually see that there are just a couple tabs that are holding this lens into place. So we're going to be using the fork portion of our fork-shaped wedge tool. We're going to be prying just right in the center of the tab, right? So each fork would go on opposite ends of the tab. So just like so, as you can see there. And just go ahead and jimmy the tool inside of there. And then once you're wedged in, just pry outward and the lens should come out very easily. Just do the same to the opposite end, just like so. Now this bulb may be difficult to remove just with your bare hands, just because of a lack of space. And so a trick in order to remove the bulb very easily is just to take a small piece of tape, and we're gonna wrap the tape around the halogen bulb. All right, so we have the piece of tape wrapped all around the bulb, and then you just want to take the tail end of the tape and then yank the bulb out. So here we have our map LED, so we'll just pop that in. Now these bulbs, they're non-polarity specific, so you can pop them in any orientation and they should come on. And you can test the bulb just by pressing down on the power switch, which is just right here towards the rear of the vehicle. So now we can just reinstall the lens. We're first just gonna wanna line up this tab right here. This is towards the rear of the vehicle, into the socket where that power switch is. And then once that's installed, let's just apply some pressure on these tabs here until those lock into place. So now we're going to be installing on the rear dome light. Now we're going to be using the flat portion of our serrated knife tool in order to access the bulbs here. Now there are clips holding this lens into place pretty much all around this receptacle. So we're just going to be taking the tool. We're going to start from the pretty much the front of the lens, so towards the nose of the vehicle. We're going to be prying the flat portion in between the lens here and then the entire plastic receptacle here. So just go ahead, wedge that tool in there, and then once you have a little bit of separation in between the lens and the receptacle, just pry outward and a couple lips will come loose. And you can just go ahead and work your way around the entire lens until everything comes loose. Now, as you can see, I've already gone ahead. We've already swapped out the driver's side bulb to LED. Now we're going to be working on the passenger side. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the pointed portion of our pointed wedge tool, and we're going to reach into the receptacle, and we're going to be prying from the rear of the halogen bulb in order to release it. So then let's just go ahead. We're going to reach in. Let's make sure that this metal plate doesn't get in the way, and then just pry from the rear until the halogen bulb comes loose, just like that. And so here we have the LED, so we're gonna pop that in. Now let's just test the light. Everything's looking good. Now, in order to reinstall this lens cover, we're just gonna be lining up these 2 tabs right here towards the rear of the vehicle into the appropriate slots right here, just like so. And what you want to do before locking everything into place is you just want to push the tabs up enough so that they can make it inside of the headliner, just like so. And then once those are inside of the headliner, you can go ahead, line up these tabs, apply a little bit of pressure until everything locks into place. So now we're going to be installing on the rear truck bed lights, which are these 2 lights on the outside, as well as the third brake light, which is this center light. And in order to access these lights, we're just going to have to remove these 4 Phillips screws, and we're going to be doing so with a power drill. And now that we have the 4 Phillips screws removed, we're just going to be prying the face of the lens off, and we're going to be doing so with the fork portion of our tool. Now these bulbs have been on for a bit, so they are pretty warm. We're just going to be removing them with a rag. And lastly, we'll be removing this third brake light. This bulb wasn't on, so it's not so hot. And here are our 3 LEDs, so we'll just pop them in. So as you can see, the 2 truck bed lights are working. The center light, that's not on right now because that's a brake light. That only ignites when you hit the brake. So let's go ahead and test that out. Now, before reinstalling this rear cover, we're just gonna wanna make sure that this rubber grommet is on the outside edge of this clear plastic here, and that keeps the housing weatherproof. So we'll just go ahead, let's slide this cover over. Now we can just reinstall these Phillips screws.
What's happening, everyone? My name is Phil with PercisionLED.com, and today we have a quick tip for you on your 2nd gen or 3rd gen Toyota Tundras. That's year models 2014 to present. Now, you may have noticed, or you may find that your key fob isn't working as well for your lock and unlock function after installing LEDs, whether they are PercisionLED or another brand. And that's because on more recent year models, the RF transmitter for your key fob actually sits right here next to this 3rd brake light housing, pretty close together. Now what happens is the frequency for your lock and unlock is pretty close to the frequency that's emitted by these LED lights themselves. So depending on manufacturer and depending on the chip, it may cause interference with the RF transmitter sitting up here. So the next best thing you can do is create some isolation for your LED lights away from the transmitter. And you do that by using some EMI tape, or electromagnetic interference tape. And essentially what this does is provides somewhat of a Faraday cage or frequency isolation from this point moving over. So we're going to apply some tape on the inside of this housing along the reflective side against the wall here, leading towards the bulb on the inside, and try to make sure that all the frequency, all that extra noise created by the LED is stopped right here and does not interact or interfere with your RF transmitter. This is one method that we think will help, so let us know what you think and comment if you find this solution helpful for you. All right, let's try it.
So here we have our EMI tape. So we're gonna want to just apply this right here on the inside of the housing, and that's so that we can isolate the LED frequency from the frequency coming from the RF receiver, which is placed right here. And since this housing, this is a reflector housing, so installing this EMI tape, it's not going to interfere with the light projection that's coming from the LED bulbs. And so we're just going to place this tape just right here on the face of the lens, and we're just going to wrap that around. And again, our aim is to block the frequency coming from the LED bulbs right here from going this way towards the driver's side of the vehicle so that it doesn't interfere with the RF receiver. And if you're still having issues after you've applied this first piece of tape, you can just mimic the process and apply some tape on the left side of the other 2 housings. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So now we're going to be installing on the vanity mirror light. So as you can see, I've already gone ahead and done the light on the driver's side of the vehicle. We're going to show you how to install on the passenger side. So there are actually two tabs that are holding this lens into place. There's one on the top and there's one on the bottom. So we're going to be taking the fork portion of our fork-shaped wedge tool. We're going to be prying in between the vanity mirror receptacle and the lens. And once you're pried in there, you just want to slide down a little bit so that you can get to the bottom tab. And once you're wedged in there and you're lined up on the bottom tab, we're just going to want to twist the tool in order to release the bottom tab. Just like that. And then you could just use your free hand and remove the lens. Now we're just going to be taking the pointed wedge tool. We're going to be prying from the rear of the halogen bulb. And you're just going to go ahead and wedge the tool in there and then pry outward in order to release the bulb. And just be careful, if the light was on previously, it can be pretty hot. And so here we have our LED, so we'll just pop that in. Now, just like the other lights in the vehicle, this bulb is non-polarity specific, so you can pop it in any orientation. And you just want to be sure that the LED boards are facing outward. So now let's just install the front lens here. In order to install it, let's just line up this top tab. After that's lined up, just apply a little bit of pressure on the bottom tab until that locks into place. So now we're going to be installing on the footwell light. The footwell is actually really easy to access. You can see the face of the bulb right here. In order to remove the bulb from the socket, you're just going to want to reach underneath the footwell. You're going to feel around for the power cable. And once you find that power cable, go ahead, grasp it, twist the cable clockwise, and then just pull out to remove. Now, just like the front map light, this bulb, it's actually very difficult to remove with your bare hands. So we're just going to use that same tape trick. We're going to wrap the tape around the bulb and then use the tail end of the tape just to pull it out. So here we have our LED bulb, so we'll just pop that in. Now this T5 bulb, this bulb is actually polarity specific. So if you pop it in and if the light doesn't come on the first time around, take the bulb out, flip it 180 degrees and just reinstall. So now that you can see everything's working, just go ahead, take the power cable, wrap it around the footwell, and line up the tabs on the power cable accordingly. And once everything is seated flush, twist the power cable counterclockwise until it locks into place. So now we're going to be installing on the reverse light, which is this light right here. And in order to access the bulb, it's actually pretty simple. We're just going to have to pull the housing out a little bit, and then you'll have access to the reverse socket. And in order to release the housing, you're just going to have to remove these two outside Torx bolts. And we'll be doing that with a T27 torque bit and a power drill. So now that we have those two bolts removed, there are actually just two pins that are holding this housing into place here. There's one at the top and there's one at the bottom. So we're just going to be taking the crowbar portion of our fork-shaped wedge tool, and we're just going to pry in from the top. Just go ahead, work your way down. And then once you're wedged in there, just pry outward, and those pins will come loose. You just want to do the same thing to the bottom. Just pry outward. And these right here, these are the pins that I was referring to. So now we have access to the rear of the housing. So you just want to go ahead, this center power cable here, that's for the reverse bulb. So you just want to reach in, twist this power cable here counterclockwise, and just pull out. Now let's just go ahead and remove the bulb. Here we have our LED, so we'll just pop that in. And now let's just test the lights to make sure everything's working. So everything looks good. Now we can just reinstall the bulb here. Now you just want to line up these 4 tabs in the correct slot accordingly into the rear housing. Swivel the power cable around until everything is seated flush, just like that. And once everything is seated flush, just twist the power cable clockwise until it locks into place. Now we can just reinstall the reverse housing. We're first just going to want to line up these 2 pins into the appropriate sockets. Once those are lined up, apply some pressure to lock them into place. And now let's just reinstall the Torx bolts.
And that's the end of the installation. If you have any questions or concerns, please email us at help@PrecisionLED.com, or you can reach us online and submit a support ticket at www.PrecisionLED.com/contact. Now, like we said before, please like or subscribe if you enjoyed the video or enjoyed the process for what we do. It really does help us out when we make the next one, knowing that there's people out there watching the videos. Have a good one.